Hello, everyone. Sorry for the little bit of a delay. We were just having a few little technical glitches, which is always to be expected where we are in the world right now. I hope everybody is staying well and being healthy. Welcome to the April 2020 Teaching and Learning for Student Success monthly webinar. Thank you for joining us today for what will be a great talk about poetry in celebration of National Poetry Month with our speaker, Irene. She'll be here to share some wonderful exercises in poetry and things like that. But in the meantime, I just want to make a couple of announcements. Okay, first of all, I want to say a bit about the webinar series and go through a few housekeeping items to ensure everyone has a smooth webinar experience. First, Catch the Next is a college readiness and completion organization that offers faculty, staff, and institutional support to promote the closing of equity and achievement gaps in higher education through professional development, peer mentoring, coaching, and our community college student success program, the Ascender program. The Teaching and Learning for Student Success monthly webinar series complements our professional development series by offering programming focused on the theory and implementation of student success initiatives in higher education. Please visit catchthenext.org to learn more about our programs, to get involved, or to donate to support this programming. For those of you who are new to this webinar experience, or for those who just need a reminder, please note that all attendees do come to the webinar muted. If you have a question during the presentation, you may feel free to put that in the question and answer function or the chat function, and I can read it during the Q&A. Near the end, after Irene presents, then we'll have a Q&A session and you can type your question in. If you have a microphone or telephone audio access, you can use the hand raise feature and I will unmute you so you can speak to us. If you have a technical issue during the webinar, you can also use the chat feature or question pane to communicate those issues to me, and I can try to troubleshoot them with you. You can also email me and I will do my best to help you ensure that you have a smooth webinar experience. Finally, if this is a topic you'd like to continue discussing, and please connect with us on social media. You'll see our Facebook pages and Twitter pages are there at the bottom of the screen. If something catches your attention today or you want to continue the conversation, just use the hashtag TLFSSchat. You can see the hashtag on this slide just in case. Just a couple of announcements relevant to Catch the Next. First, I would really like to highlight that we are actively looking for papers or for anybody who wants to write for the Journal of Ideas and Pedagogy. So if you have any questions, please email me or Deborah Macbeth or Dr. Chavez. I know that people tend to be very scared at the idea of research or of writing, but please know this will be a very supportive process. And we want to make sure that the authors and readers reflect the wonderful familia of teachers, administrators, researchers, and overall just those who are committed to the success of our students. Something to highlight, we are working on the dates for the summer institutes and what those formats will look like. So for right now, everything is very tentative, just considering where we are in the middle of the pandemic. So I believe more details will be coming from Dr. Chavez momentarily. And then if you have any semester news stories that you would like to highlight, please consider sending those to Deborah Macbeth. And our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, May 21st from 3 to 4 Eastern. Now I'd like to go ahead and introduce our wonderful speaker. Irene Lara Silva is the author of 3 poetry books, Furia, Blood Sugar Canto, and Cuicali House of Song, e-chapter book called Enduring Azucares, as well as the short story collection Flesh to Bone, which won the Premio Aztlán. She and poet Dan Vera are also the co-editors of Imaniaman, Poetry Writing in the Anzalduin Borderlands, a collection of poetry and essays. Irene is the recipient of the 2017 NALAC Fund for the Grant, or Fund for the Arts, grant, the final recipient of the Alfred Cisneros de Moral Award, the fiction finalist for Arrojo's 2013 Gift of Freedom Award, and the 2008 recipient of the Gloria Anzaldúa Milagro Award. Irene is currently working on her first novel, Nací, and a short story collection called The Light of Your Body. And so without further ado, I will be turning it over to Irene.
So I'm hoping that everybody can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is this working? Yes, perfect. Okay. So it's a bit odd to read to my laptop. So I will try to envision many people in their homes and library spaces and whatever comfortable place y'all have found. Who knew that last year when Lydia invited me to do this, that we would be doing every reading and meeting and workshop this way. So it's still something I'm getting used to. I would like to welcome y'all to send any questions over the chat line. I can see anything that y'all send, and we'll address those as soon as I finish reading the piece that I want to read with y'all, or rather that I want to share with y'all. In my thinking, in ordinary times and also extraordinary times, and in unexpected times like these, I find it valuable and inspiring to look at history. And so there's a piece I wanted to share with y'all that I haven't had the opportunity to read in its entirety since the book was published. So I'm reading to y'all from the last book of poetry I published, which is, where is it? There it is. Cuicacali, House of Song, published by Saddle Road Press. And I wanted to address in this piece not just history, but also the idea of song, what song is, what the potential of song is, the tradition of song, looking at song as something other than as something to be consumed. And so I was looking at my history, my family history, community history, Texas history. And although it goes a bit further back, I was mostly concentrating on the period of time between the Treaty Guadalupe Hidalgo to now. So it's a meditation on history, on song, on community, and it has many, many parts. It's very long, but I hope that that it feels like something valuable to listen to right now, and also that it moves you to think of where we are in history, and the history that is happening now, and how we approach living in history and living in time. So Cuicacali. 1. Body of song. Never say we did not speak. Our tongue is an infinite tongue, strong in its ignorance of your American time, its roots reaching deep into the earth where sunlight and the memory of sunlight live in the darkness. There are songs breathing in our words. There are songs breathing in the sunlight. There are songs breathing in the earth. Our hands are breathing with songs. We are inhabitants of a border, inhabited by a border. We say Tejanos, we say Mexicanos, we say Mexicans from this side, Mexicans from that side, we say Mexican Americans, we say Chicanos, Chicanos, Chicanexes, we say Tex-Mex, we say indigenous. Some of us know the names, Kickapoo, Apache, Comanche. Some of us know, many do not, but we know, we know. We say here, we say there, we say there is no line, we say, we mean us the people, we mean we who belong to this land, to all our lands. We mean we, our hands working the soil, we mean we, our feet dancing on this earth, we, keeping it turning, we mean we, our blood spilled here, we mean we, equal parts earth and sun. 2. Earth of Song. February 2nd, 1848, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. We are the lost children of a broken treaty, the dispossessed of the ink provided for the protection of persons and property. Is it a treaty when one side never intended to honor it, when the ink itself was greed made manifest? We are the many times dispossessed. land of the Alabama, land of the Apache, land of the Aranama, land of the Atacapan, land of the Bedai, land of the Caddo, land of the Comanche, land of the Choctaw, land of the Cushara, land of the Hasinai, land of the Humano, land of the Karankawa, land of the Kickapoo, land of the Kikwa, land of the Tonkawa, land of the Wichita. We claim all our blood, all of this land, all of these Americas. Though we were dispossessed when the Spanish came, dispossessed when the Mexicans shamed the indigenous of us, dispossessed when the whites came as immigrants to Texas, which was still Mexico, dispossessed when they fought Mexico in order to preserve slavery, dispossessed when the United States said manifest destiny. In school, we are taught manifest destiny as if it was everything, doctrine and driving need, inescapable destiny, the happy ever after. But remember, always remember, though our history may be written in blood, what they teach us is only the slightest sliver of the truth. Not everyone believed in the necessity of a western coast, the necessity of war, the necessity of dispossession, the necessity of death. And always, always, there are those who resist. 3. Blood of song. We do not forget to sing. We sing when we are screaming, we sing when we are whispering, we sing when we are praying, we sing when we are dying. This is what my blood knows. My ancestors have sung unceasingly. They still sing. They translate the Matanza of 1915 as a massacre, but Matanza is more accurately translated as slaughter, as in the slaughter of animals. The Treaty of 1848 ended the Mexican-American War, they say, but the war on Mexican Americans never ended. Decades upon decades of our people killed in plain sight, killed with impunity, bodies hung from trees, bodies collapsed on the ground, bodies left to rot. Some of the killers were vigilantes. Some of the killers were eager to steal the land, steal the land, steal the land. If the history books admit to 187,000 acres of land taken in this time in South Texas alone, how many acres do we imagine were lost in reality? Some of the killers were Texas Rangers. The history books use careful language, say there were excesses of force. But even they will admit the Rangers were created with the intent to kill Mexicans, Mexicans on both sides of the river, created with the intent to kill Native Americans. They saw our people as animals to slaughter, and they slaughtered them, and they slaughtered them. Thousands and thousands from 1915 to 1919 alone. A bitter thing to see brown-skinned children playing, pretending to be Texas Rangers. The slaughtered are still singing. There is a song only spilled blood sings, one part lamentation, one part prayer, one part rage, one part creation, one part fractured into nameless parts. 4. Memory of song. No dogs or Mexicans allowed. No dogs, no Negroes, no Mexicans allowed. We serve whites only, no Mexicans or Spanish. My mother was born in 1940, had a first-grade education, but she could read those signs. She remembered those signs and all the places where those signs were not necessary because she knew she was not welcome. In this land of segregated schools, segregated wealth, segregated neighborhoods, segregated graveyards. When my mother told me her first memories of language, she told me about learning to sign her name. How at least she didn't have to sign with an X, and she told me about those signs. My mother died in 2001. All her life, it seems, she never entered any space without looking for the signs, explicit or intangible, that would say she was not welcome. All her life, she never assumed safety, never assumed protection. 5. People of song. What is a border? What is a nation? What are citizens? What is North? What is South? What is a people? Blood recognizes blood. Lines on a map are not real. History is a story told and told crooked. Nations are a falsehood. until they are not, until the lines are used to dispossess, to rip, to tear, to say these families have no right to be together, this person has no right to their land, this person is no longer a citizen, no longer legal, no longer human, because only humans have rights. What was repatriation but another way to break the treaty? What was repatriation but another way to steal land, another way to render us not human? 400,000 to 2 million Mexicans and Americans of Mexican descent deported to Mexico in 7 years. Citizenship did not matter. 60% of them were born citizens and were still deported. It was their names, their skin that made them targets. They did not use the phrase ethnic cleansing then, but what else can you call it then and now? 6. Bones of song. You ask if the bones are heavy. Bones are always heavy. They bear the weight of a life, the weight of all the lives that came before them and the lives that followed. They bear the weight of blood and muscle and sinew, of grief and work and loss and time. Falfurrias, Brooks County, Texas. The words mass and grave live in the nebulous place where we put all the words we must keep at a distance so that we can breathe and sleep and live, so that we can work, so that we can hope, the distance at which you keep nightmares, the distance at which you keep history, the distance at which you keep the stories that all these words invoke. Lynching, train car, Texas Ranger, separation, repatriation, border wall, death, murder, death, murder, death, and the word that is poison, forget. If remembering was not important, the bones would not remain. Bones would rot and fall away like flesh. Bones would liquefy, dry, and flake away. Bones would be the consistency of flower petals and dragonfly wings. Bones would bear no stories, no names, bear no essence. Bones would bend and sway as inconsequential things do. They didn't come here to die. They came looking for work, for the end of violence, for life, for family, for dreams. They didn't come here to die. How many other deaths in the desert? There are bones from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean. Where there is dust, you must ask yourself how much of it is bone, how much of it is anguish, how much of it is now nameless. They said, enforcement through deterrence. They said it, they say it again, they are saying it now. Let them risk their lives, let them lose everything, and when they are nothing, bury them like animals, because they dare to cross the line. In Falfurrias, little town so close to the border, little town with its name of uncertain origin, Lipan, Spanish, French, bastard name for a little town that might as well be named Checkpoint, Texas. Little town where brown people live and brown people die. Many brown people die. What else do mass graves signify? What mass graves always signify? These are not humans. Mass graves with bodies in trash bags, mass graves with skulls and bones all tossed in together. Names are lost in mass graves. And many someones are still praying for the safety of their father, mother, son, daughter, wife, husband, child. But they are praying for bones, nothing but bones. Sometimes it seems the border is a graveyard soaked with blood. All the bones beneath the ground rattling. But remember, the border is not a line. The border extends hundreds of miles, both south and north and even further. The border is everywhere there are bodies and bones. The border is everywhere we die because of lines on a map. El Paso, Juarez. We will say femicides. We will say border and mean a narrow strip of land. We will say border and think of the women who have marked their panties with blood, women who cross with morning after pills because they know they will be raped, women on both sides dying, women on both sides killed. We will say femicides and think border, but indigenous women across these continents are missing, are taken, are killed, bodies abandoned, women killed, and no one names the killers. Women killed, and women killed, and women killed, and when will it end? Women being killed, women being taken, and women being killed. Voices whisper from all their bones. 7. Breath of song. In the beginning, before the first word, there was a breath, and an infinite moment of decision to whisper, to scream, to speak, to sing. Or perhaps there was no such moment. Perhaps there was no doubt. Perhaps there was only ever one choice. Because the first breath was created for song. Because we were created for song. So let us be song, shaped by song and shapers of song, carriers and keepers, inheritors and creators. Let us be song. 8. House of Song. If I sing you songs, will you listen? I am a house of song. You are a house of song. We are a house of song. However we began, wherever we began, however and wherever we end, whatever we might have been or could still yet be, we are a house of song. Rage and love intermingled in us, and only the song to keep us, name us, make us, heal us, remember us whole. The song, the house, the place where grief and tenderness sleep, where remembering wakes and daydreams, wakes and daydreams. The place where the daily choice to sing is made, is lit and set alight. This is the house where we sleep and then wake to stare at the sun and pace the earth and chant, we survive, we survive, we survive. And by chanting we live. By chanting we do not forget. We sing, we wail, we pour ourselves out of our mouths until sing and wail are not distinct things, until singing is wailing and wailing is singing. The land sings us until we are and are not the history, until we are and are not the bodies, until we are and are not the dispossessed, until we are and are not the hunted, the rejected, the repatriated, the violated, the lost. The land sings us so that we do not surrender. Not then, not now, not ever. Not in this time or that time, not in this time of lost children, not in this time of walls. We cede nothing, forget nothing. The voices are here. The voices are with us, within us. The voices do not end. The singing does not end. The voices sing and the voices sing and the voices sing. And if you hear silence, it is only because all of the voices have become one. Sometimes it will seem as if you are hearing silence, but what you are hearing is the singing of all of the voices in the universe, singing at once, with one unending breath. The voices do not end. The singing does not end. And the voices sing, and the voices sing, though bodies may suffer and bodies may die. The stories do not end. The song does not end. This is a house of song, and in this house of song, singing does not end. The 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 song never ends. Thank you all so much for listening. All right, so let's take a few questions. Anyone with questions?
Okay, so the first one, Dr. Chavez wrote, it said, what year did you write that? I felt like I was watching a movie and it's very powerful.
That was written in 2018, actually pretty much all summer of 2018. It was a piece that I'd been wanting to write for years, and it took a tremendous amount of research to kind of get all the details together. But yeah, I think it was almost the last poem I wrote for that collection. And I love, I think, the way that it came out in its entirety as more of a meditation than a history lesson and a meditation together, but without losing the emphasis on song.
think something that, within our program, we have a lot of faculty members who are teaching writing and then teaching things like Mexican American studies or Mexican American art and things like that. And so, how do you feel, or how do you get folks to write with such a, like, there's a clarity to it, but there's such an emotionality to it, like such a visceral emotion to it. So, is there a way to teach that?
Um, I think so, but it depends on a few different things. Um, the first, I think, is that the instructor needs to not be afraid of emotion, because that's the clearest way to get to truth, um, to get to emotion, and to allow writing to do, I think, what it's best equipped to do, which is to work as a vehicle for transformation. But I know I've talked to many writers, um, and many teachers also, about the need to be open to it. If you're going to go to emotional, truthful places, and especially with students, and that's of whatever age, whether they're kids, whether they're in high school, whether they're college, whether they're adults, is that um, we have to be prepared as the instructors for not just laughter and not just people telling awkward or painful truths, but also for pain and for tears, um, and people who will seek not necessarily consolation, but who will seek to know that they are being um, earnestly and openly listened to. The second part of that um, is that so first is to be open to all of that. Second would be to ask for that, um, to ask for truth and emotion. Um, I think one of the things that happens with history or with theory a lot of the times is that students aren't given a chance to connect with it personally. And I really believe that we learn according to what we love. Um, so we have to find ways to relate it to our own personal history, our family history, our community, to see to find the passion to connect with those things.
Hmm. So our students in our communities are suffering right now, with a pandemic. So are there any suggestions on how to get students to write poetry to release fear and pain, or I think the other side of that, is there any poetry that you recommend that you feel is healing?
There's a lot of poetry that's healing. Poets that come to mind right now. The poet that I always go to in difficult times is Audre Lorde. I love Audre Lorde. Um, Joy Harjo's work. There's a Native American poet named Deborah Miranda who has some excellent work. Um, and right now, Carmen Tafoya also comes to mind.
Excellent.
We're looking for
Go
different
ahead.
things.
Sorry.
Oh, no. But yeah, looking for inspiration and strength and beauty and language, and all of those poets are open to facing challenge as well.
So, our colleague Alicia Vasquez said that she is so honored every time that she gets to hear you read your own work. And she said, I'm curious to know how we can incorporate journaling during this time in our personal lives and for students. It's such a large shift for students from in person to virtual and having had an extended spring break, etc. So, basically, how do we use writing to process what's going on?
I think it starts with the small. I think it could be overwhelming, not just for students, but pretty much anyone, to try to encapsulate everything that's going on, or to make them feel like they, need to read and absorb more news in order to respond to what's going on. So I think the strategy to use now might be to start with a small. What is the daily routine? What are the small challenges? What are the small challenges that has suddenly become overwhelming, like, finding toilet paper, things like that. And then moving that more into, how we're feeling about everything. What is happening, not just outside of us, but internally, in our dreams. How are we approaching the current situation, not just as physical beings, but as spiritual beings, and possibly even too taking down the stories of people around us, whether that's an interview that they can do in person with a family member, or give a reason or an additional reason to reach out to people over the internet and take in those stories.
So our colleague Lillian Huerta wrote, Hermana, thank you for such beautiful work. Hearing this has given me strength. Your work spoke to my soul. So how did you find your way to becoming a poet?
I started when I was very, very young. I think I was probably 10 maybe when I wrote my first poem. And I know that I read poetry in school, but I don't remember what I read first. What I think I remember affecting me the most when I was young were song lyrics, especially música conjunto, música norteña, Cornelio Reina. I fell in love with rancheras and started singing them when I was probably 12. But the lyrics of Jose Alfredo Jimenez and Juan Gabriel, and songs sung by all the greats. Songs sung by Pedro Infante and Antonio Aguilar and Lucha Villa and Lola and everybody else. So I hope that love of song and musicality is something that has stayed in the work. I don't think though that I found my voice or the themes that I wanted to write about until I was in college, when I had the whole introduction to Latinx writers and to history. I especially remember reading and the effect that it had on me, David Montejano's, what was it, Texan-Mexican Relations in South Texas, and reading also Sherry Moraga and Gloria Anzaldua's This Bridge Called My Back, and how that shaped what I wanted to speak about. And it also turns out that my first poetry readings, as I've told people, were not in cafes or in class. My first poetry readings were actually all in protests and marches and things like that. And so that was a very different energy and a different community to read and write for. And I think in some sense that has stayed with me, that as much as poetry can be a very personal tool of transformation and communication, there is still some integral part of it that is always about community.
And how is it, I think, what kind of research do you find yourself doing? You said it took you a while to gather the details, and it sounded like the poem that you read us was a deep dive into history over the last 150, almost 200 years. So how do you find yourself blending the reading of history? You mentioned David Montejano, but then also Audre Lorde.
So part of it is that I'm either a very slow researcher or a very lazy researcher. So this poem in some ways is the culmination of or one of the products of my having been, an avid reader of history and Chicanx history over the last 27 years. 27 years since starting college. And then when it came to the poem itself, I felt like I knew the substance, I knew the body of what I wanted to capture, but I wanted to be very, very careful about the specific details. So that was more, not so much of my having to research all of it as it was to research the wonderful small details, which the internet is amazing. It's amazingly helpful, because the most of the history I already knew, but I just wanted the small bits. I think the only thing that surprised me in the research that I did, and and as much as I know this, I know that for every pretty much every law passed, every major anything that happens, it battles, war, whatever else, I know that there are people that protest them. I know this, but it's always a surprise to see it documented. So especially when I was reading up on details for Manifest Destiny, I was surprised at how much information they had about the people who organized against it, people who protested the Mexican-American War. It was surprising to see that documented, because that's not something that you learn about in school. Protest is always taken out of the history books. And so I was fascinated by that.
That's beautiful. Let's see, Dr. Chavez wrote, at one of our receptions, you read a book titled Pieces, she thinks it was. It said the most impactful way for her to understand diabetes. Are there any ideas on taking a poem and creating a civic engagement component at the community level? So blending those two things.
There's possibly so many different ways. So many different ways of doing that. Sorry, I'm taken by all the possibilities. But I was going to say that also, the book before this one, or the poetry collection before this one is titled But Sugar Canto. And even that one, in its discussion of diabetes, wasn't solely about my personal experience with it, or the experience of my brother or my parents or my family. It also, discussed things like nutrition and education, oppression, and impact on a community level, on a society level, impact on indigenous peoples. Because I think, no matter what it is we're discussing, whether it's history or health or anything else, there is always an impact, a communal impact. There are always ways that we can work and move through and organize, and speak to all of those issues. Always, always, always. For me anyway, I don't understand art that doesn't have that understanding, or even why we would think that art can't connect to our activism and organization and education. These things support each other. They fuel each other.
Do you feel like there is a way where poetry can convey a message or a feeling more powerfully than, I guess, to connect back to the community engagement, better than flyers and signs and protest slogans, that there's just something that poetry can capture more viscerally?
I don't like saying more. I think everything has its purpose. Everything has its reason. People are reached differently. For some people, a slogan is the best way. Not to mention that when you think about it, the very well-known slogans, things like, we didn't cross the border crossed us. It has captured a truth so succinctly that in a way it functions as it functions the same way poetry does. And I believe with poetry, it gives us a bit more space. not as much room as like say a novel, but it's concentrated language and concentrated emotion. And then you have the addition that with poetry, your choices in poetry, whether it's language or rhythm or anything else, are almost infinite. So you can do almost infinite things in a concentrated space. So I think it's another way of speaking to people. It's another way of reaching them. Some people will be reached one way, some people will be reached another. Different feelings need different things. So, you know, whether slogan or flyer or film or movie or speech or poem or novel or story or whatever it is, you know, we do whatever we can. I always end up quoting, and I'm probably going to badly paraphrase it, Toni Cade Bambara. I believe the quote is that the role of the poet is to make revolution irresistible.
Wow, that's very powerful.
Yep. And then, you know, and also in some ways we can say, you know, revolution, we can say healing, we can say education. It's the role of poetry and art in our society. That role is to make, you know, revolution and change not just possible, not just something that we can visualize, but it's to make it irresistible.
Thank you. I want to give just another minute or two to see if any more questions roll in. But while everyone is thinking about their questions or typing those up, I just want to make another couple of last minute announcements. One, the Ascender Makeup Seminar will be held on May 27th and 28th, and it will be hybrid like the TTT track was. So please save those dates. It's May 27th and 28th, and then more information will be coming available. And then the summer seminar has been moved to July 27th. If you plan to get UT credit, however, you need to register for credit for the summer, and you must do that by May the 18th. So if you have any questions about that, either contact Dr. Chavez or Juan Iga. And let's see, I think we have covered all of the questions. I think more than anything, I just want to echo the sentiments of Alicia and Lillian that we highlighted earlier. And thank you for sharing that poetry with us. You know, if nothing else, I feel like it was a lovely break to hear something else, and a reminder that during this time period, we could all probably use a little bit more poetry in our lives. And so, Irene, I just want to say thank you very, very much for sharing with us and for helping us celebrate National Poetry Month.
You are very welcome. I am very happy to be here. And actually, if we've got a few more minutes, you
yes,
want one little poem? A little one.
I would absolutely love to hear one.
Here we go. So a last little one. So everybody knows what axolotos are, yes? I'm going to assume yes. The little, okay, I'll let y'all look them up. So axoloto. Little warrior, almost imperceptibly scarred from so much healing. How many regrown limbs, how many repaired organs, even precious brain tissue created anew. Teach me this, little warrior, how you remain tender and infinite, soft and eternal in the face of struggle. How it is the healing has already begun, even before the wound. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. All right, well, thank you. So to everyone who's listening, thank you for your participation, and we will see you back on May the 21st. In the meantime, I hope that everybody stays well, stays happy, stays healthy as they can. And our thoughts go out to everyone in our familia just for good health and good cheer right now during this pandemic. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Okay.